Good evening, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Boquete Weekly. I'm Sean Murphy, and this is your source for local news in English from Boquete, Chiriquí Province, and Panama. Before we begin, an important note. Boquete Weekly provides English summaries and translations of news stories originally published in Spanish-language media outlets, including La Prensa, El Panamá América, La Estrella de Panamá, TV in Panama, and other sources. I am not the original reporter of these stories. All content is based on publicly available news sources, and I make every effort to accurately represent the original reporting. The views and information presented in this source material do not necessarily reflect my own opinions. In this episode, we'll be covering major stories from around Latin America, important developments in Panama, local news affecting our Boquete community, Panama's exciting World Cup qualification journey, and your local weather update. Let's get started. In Ecuador, the president replaced 6 ministers after a referendum defeat. President Daniel Noboa ordered a major cabinet reshuffle after the recent national referendum resulted in a resounding rejection of his 4 main proposals, with more than 60% of votes against 2 of them. The reshuffle included the ministers who headed the portfolios of government, labor, education, health, agriculture, and human development, as well as the National Risk Management Secretariat. According to official statements, the aim is to strengthen the national government's management to address the country's needs, following a public rejection that was interpreted as the first major setback for the Noboa administration. Among the opponents, the most notable are the designation of Alvaro Rosero as head of the ministry government, Vice President Maria Jose Pinto as acting Minister of Health, and the return of former Economy Minister Juan Carlos Vega to head the Ministry of Agriculture. These moves aim to restructure the executive's agenda and regain political momentum amidst a period of institutional weakness. Meanwhile, Noboa began an official visit to the United States on Tuesday. The decree authorizing his trip states that the president will be out of the country between November 18th and 20th, with the aim of strengthening, quote, diplomatic ties with its trade allies, unquote, according to the document itself, which authorizes his departure in the exercise of his constitutional powers. This story was originally reported by Radar Latam 360. In Venezuela, Maria Corina Machado launches a manifesto outlining the Venezuela of the future. Maria Conado Machado, who has been in hiding for over a year, presented the Manifesto of Freedom, a document in which she describes her vision of a democratic Venezuela in reconstruction after the departure of the Nicolas Maduro regime. In the text, released as a message to Venezuelans and the international community, she denounces the, quote, long and violent abuse of power, end quote, by Chavismo and maintains that the country is living through, quote, the final hours, end quote, of a regime responsible, she claims, for murders, torture, disappearances, and thousands of political prisoners. Machado recalls that the opposition never recognized the results of the July 28th elections, in which it denounced fraud and presented more than 80% of the tally sheets as evidence. She also points out that her running mate, Edmundo González Urruata, is in exile in Spain. Manifesto proposes 5 pillars for the Venezuelan, quote, new era, unquote. Full restoration of the rule of law, guarantee of fundamental freedoms such as life, property, and free expression, profound reform of the armed forces and police forces so that they answer to the citizens and not to an elite, a free market economic model with a limited state that allows for the recovery of the energy industry and facilitates the return of 8 million migrants, and a legitimate electoral system that expresses popular sovereignty without manipulation or coercion. Machado asserts that freedom, quote, is not a privilege gained by the government, end quote, but a right that the people must exercise to, quote, rise up from this era of oppression, end quote, and calls on the armed forces to support a peaceful transition. She also positions Venezuela as a future, quote, pillar of democratic and energy security in the Western Hemisphere, end quote. capable of reintegrating into the international community after decades of isolation. However, the document does not include an operational mechanism for the regime's departure, which raises questions about the viability and timing of the transition she considers imminent, especially in a context of growing geopolitical tension in the Caribbean marked by the U.S. military deployment. Machado presents the manifesto as the symbolic starting point of a new phase of her political struggle, a roadmap towards a free country institutionally rebuilt and open to the world. This story was also reported originally in Radar Latam 360. Cuba is struggling to alleviate power outages amid reduced fuel supplies from Venezuela and Mexico. Cuba's crude oil and fuel imports fell by more than a third in the first 10 months of the year compared to the same period in 2024 due to drastic cuts in supplies from its allies in Mexico and Venezuela, according to the maritime data and documents seen by Reuters, making it impossible for the Caribbean nation to alleviate daily power outages. The island relies on imports of refined products to meet demand, including fuel oil and diesel for power generation, gasoline, and aviation fuel. U.S. sanctions and a deep economic crisis have prevented the government from purchasing enough fuel for years, forcing an increased dependence on allies. Between January and October, Cuba's oil imports from Mexico, which emerged as a stable supplier in 2023 after regularizing shipment of light crude, fell to about 5,000 barrels per day, 73% less than the 18,800 of the same period in 2024, according to shipment data. Imports of crude oil and fuels from Venezuela, Cuba's most important political ally, fell nearly 15% in the same period, with the reduction partially hitting fuel oil supplies for power generation, according to internal documents from the state-owned PDVSA. Overall, Cuban imports of crude oil, liquefied petroleum gas, and residual motor fuels from all sources fell 35% to about 45,400 BPD between January and October, compared to 69,400 BPD in the same period the previous year. Both Mexico and Venezuela face production constraints and do not have much spare capacity to offer Cuba. The reduced availability of light crude and fuel oil for export, coupled with the island's difficulties in paying for cash purchases, has capped imports. Russia, a supplier that has helped Cuba in previous crises, has only sent a couple of shipments of Ural crude this year, in line with the 2024 supply, the data showed. PDVSA, the Mexican state oil company Pemex, and the information ministries of Cuba and Venezuela did not respond to requests for comment. This story was originally reported by CNN in Espanol. This show is produced in partnership with TripAdvisor by Viator. Right now, the producers of the show have curated a collection of unique and fun experiences in Boquete that you can book at boquetedeals.online. It's a wonderful way to support this show and to find exciting and fun activities to participate in your local community, such as coffee tours, bicycle tours, hiking, and other fun Boquete activities. If you would like to support this show in a more direct fashion, please go to boqueteweekly.com, where you will find our Patreon, where you can provide direct financial support for this show. For $5 a month, you receive an ad-free version of this show, lacking the message you're listening to now. For $15 a month, you receive a verbal thank you in every upcoming episode, as well as the ability to ask me, the host, a question once a month, which I will answer on air about Chiriqui or Panama. We reserve the right to reject any questions we find inappropriate. And for $35 a month, you become an executive producer of the show, entitled to attend a monthly meeting at a location in Boquete to be determined with other executive producers, where you can discuss the future of the show and provide your input. That's boqueteweekly.com to support the show directly, and boquetedeals.online to find fun activities in Boquete. Moving on to Panamanian news, the Electoral Tribunal has expressed disagreement with statements made by President Mulino prior to the 2024 election. The Electoral Tribunal issued a statement this Saturday, November 22nd, in response to the declarations made by the President of the Republic, José Raúl Mulino, on Friday in Costa Rica, where he recalled that he had told magistrates of the electoral body that he would, quote, set the country ablaze end quote, if they did not allow him to participate in the 2024 elections. Quote, the full electoral tribunal expresses its disagreement with the statements made by the president of Panama, Jose Raul Mulino, during a visit to the Republic of Costa Rica this Friday, November 21st, 2025, said the statement from the TE. In the statement, the TE recounts the events prior to the 2024 election, particularly regarding the challenge to the presidential candidacy of the Realizando Metas Party. The entity indicated that the challenge was resolved through a plenary agreement, specifically Agreement number 11-1 of March 4th, 2024, 2 months before the elections took place. Quote, the decisions that were made during the electoral process were handled in strict accordance with the country's legal framework, unquote, the Electoral Tribunal said in its statement. The statement framed the Electoral Tribunal's role as organizing, quote, free, transparent, and democratic elections, end quote. However, it did not provide any new specific details regarding President Molino's remarks in San Jose. Mulino recalled that prior to the election, he said, quote, I told the three magistrates of the Electoral Tribunal something that I think I have never said before, not even in Panama. If you lend yourself to preventing me from running, I will set this country ablaze, believe me, because here the rights of the Panamanian people will be respected. End quote. At the time, the magistrates of the TE were Alfredo Junca, Luis Guerra, and Eduardo Valdez Escoferia. Valdez Escoferia retired after the 2024 elections and a 4-decade career at the TE. His place is now occupied by Narciso Arellano, who serves as presiding magistrate and was appointed by President Mulino in October of 2024. This story was originally reported in La Prensa. President Mulino will request Panama's permanent membership in Mercosur on December 20th. President Jose Raul Mulino confirmed this Friday, November 21st, in the city of San Jose, Costa Rica, where he is on a tour with part of his cabinet, that he will request Panama's permanent membership in the Mercosur this December 20th at the Southern Common Market Summit in Brazil. The Republic of Panama currently has the status of association state of the Southern Common Market, or Mercosur. Therefore, it will request its permanent inclusion. Quote, as a country, on December 20th, we will present our permanent membership to the Mercosur Summit of Presidents, joining the South American group of countries that together represents hundreds of millions of inhabitants, end quote, Mulino stated. President Mulino and the President of Costa Rica, Rodrigo Chavez, reaffirmed this Friday in the city of San Jose their commitment to deepen bilateral cooperation with emphasis on key areas such as trade, agriculture, migration, logistics, tourism, and security. The meeting took place during the Panamanian president's one-day official visit to the neighboring country, where both heads of state held a private meeting in Las Musas Hall of the historic National Theater. Mulino emphasized that his visit was aimed at, quote, strengthening the bonds of friendship and fraternity between our two peoples and governments, end quote, and expressed his gratitude for Costa Rican hospitality. Chavez, for his part, stated that Costa Rica welcomes Panama, quote, with open doors and hearts, end quote, describing Mulino as, quote, a leader and a friend, end quote. Mulino stated, according to the EFE news agency, that Panama's accession to Mercosur aims to, quote, interact more with the South American nations that are part of it, end quote. The president explained that the goal is to interact with Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay as full members, while Bolivia is in the process of joining, and Chile, Peru, Colombia, Ecuador, Guyana, and Suriname are listed as associate states, as is Panama at present. Quote, and to make available to those large countries in the South our logistics platform, our geographical position, our canal, our ports, our special economic zones, so that their large exports of grains, fertilizers, and meats reach Panama. End quote. Following the meeting, the Costa Rican government awarded Mulino the Juan Mora Fernandez Order in the Grande of Gran Cross Gold Plaque, one of the highest distinctions in the country in recognition of the strengthening binational relations. The day concluded with an official luncheon at the headquarters of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Costa Rica, which was attended by ministers, diplomats, and senior officials from both delegations. This story was originally reported in La Estrella de Panama. Moving on to local Chiriqui news, the Panamanian Association of Business Executives, or APEDE, Chiriqui chapter, celebrated its 60th anniversary, highlighting its historic role in promoting a more prosperous, ethical, and democratic Panama. During the commemorative event, Yulina de Santos, national president of APEDE, highlighted the leadership that the Chiriqui chapter has had in its vision of development, as well as its firm defense of free enterprise and democracy in the country. For her part, Gisela Otero de Socaras, president of the Chiriqui chapter, emphasized that for 6 decades, APEDE has sustained its work on four fundamental pillars: democracy, ethics, freedom, and education. Quote, APEDE gave me the opportunity to serve, to learn, and to contribute to a country that welcomed me with open arms. Panama needs committed, ethical, and courageous citizens, end quote, Otero emphasized, calling on those present to continue working as a team for regional progress. The provincial governor, Aixa Santamaria, also participated in the event, highlighting the organization's role. Quote, the country needs organizations like APEDE which contribute to development. Today, more than ever, I want you to know that we all need you. We need your collaboration, your support, your ideas, your participation, so that, together with the government, we can move forward on this path of progress and strengthen the democratic values for which we all strive and dream. The event, held in Boquete, was attended by business leaders from across the region. The ceremony also included a special tribute to former chapter presidents, including Camilo Agustin Berenes, Felipe Ariel Rodriguez, Leonel Sanjur, Mayela Castro de Rochebert, Mavi Espinosa de Perez, and Douglas Gomez, among others, recognizing their contributions and legacy. Loyalty pins were also awarded to outstanding members for their years of service. Subsequently, DeSanctis swore in 15 new members who are now joining the Business Association. APEDE Chiriqui is an association of business executives dedicated to promoting an ethical, democratic, and progressive framework for business activity in the region and throughout Panama. The story was originally reported in Destino, Panama. Women from rural areas around the Chiriqui region held their provincial meeting in La Concepcion in the Bugaba district. A range of consumer crafts, clothing, Christmas decorations, Creole foods, patio sales, and ornamental plants presented by them were purchased by the attending public in the central court of Bugabita community. Groups from Bogaba, Dolega, Boquete, Tierras Altas, and Baru participated, advised by Rural Development Extensions in the different MIDA agencies in Chiriqui. Accompanying them were the head of the MIDA agency in Bugaba, Meleka Arauz, Karen Serrano from San Andres, and the regional coordinator of rural development, Katia Contreras. The Rural Women's Network of Panama, Chiriqui chapter, is preparing to celebrate Rural Women's Day on December 5th, an event that will take place in the amphitheater of Miguel de Cervantes Park in the city of David. The story was originally reported by the Panamanian Ministry of Agricultural Development. Chiriqui has returned to the top of intermediate baseball after an 18-year drought. After almost 2 decades without tasting glory, the Chiriqui team was crowned champion of the 2025 Senior Intermediate National Baseball Championship, securing its third historic title in this category and the right to represent Panama in the international tournament to be held in Ciudad Victoria, Mexico, from June 7th to the 14th. The grand finale was played in an immense two-game series against Panama Metro, in which the Chiriqui team demonstrated their superiority both offensively and defensively, consolidating a performance that will be etched in the country's sporting memory. The last time Chiriqui won this championship was in 2007. This new victory not only breaks a long drought, but also confirms the competitive level that the region has been consolidating in the youth categories. Meanwhile, in the top division, Panama Metro continues to make its mark. In the semifinal series of the 2025 National Major League Baseball Championship, they achieved a crucial 2-0 victory against Cocle, giving them a 2-1 lead in the series. A strong performance on the mound was key to securing their win. The excitement of Panamanian baseball remains alive, with Chiriqui as the new champion of the intermediate level and a major series that promises more intensity in upcoming matches. This story was originally reported in Reten Chiriqui. In sports, Panama defeated El Salvador 3-0 on Tuesday, November 18th, 2025, at Estadio Ramon Fernandez to qualify for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Goals were scored for Panama by Cesar Blackman, Eric Davis, and Puma Rodriguez. This is only Panama's second World Cup qualification. The first was in Russia in 2018. Coach Thomas Christensen said, quote, "Nobody can stop us. We are proud of what we have achieved. I was hurt by the lack of confidence from some. They showed why they are Panama." End quote. Gianni Infantino, the FIFA president, congratulated Panama, saying, quote, "We welcome back the Panamanian team. It's very special that they have a prominent role in a tournament that will make history, organized by their neighbors in CONCACAF." Thousands of Panamanians took to the streets to celebrate. The tournament will take place between June 11th and July 19th of 2026 in the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. President Mulino will recognize all national team players in December for their achievement. This story was originally reported by Fox Sports. Now for your local weather forecast. Here in Boquete, we're in the transition from rainy season to dry season. Temperatures remain comfortable in the low to mid 70s Fahrenheit. That's around 21 to 25 degrees Celsius. We're still seeing occasional afternoon showers, but rainfall is decreasing as we head through the drier months of December through April. Overall, pleasant conditions expected for the weekend ahead. This weather report is brought to you by ETESA, Panama's National Meteorological Service. That's all for this week's edition of Boquete Weekly. I'm Sean Murphy, and thank you for listening. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with friends and fellow expats in the Boquete community. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. Remember, all the stories we covered tonight were translated and summarized from Spanish or English language news sources. For detailed information, please refer to the original publications mentioned in this episode. We'll be back next week with more news from Boquete, Chiriqui, and Panama. Until then, stay informed and stay connected. Good night, Boquete. The theme music you are listening to is Wholesome by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons.